Your jump to freelance starts here. Welcome to the Jump Moment.
What if you're burning out because you're underutilized in your job? This week on the podcast, we have a conversation with Frank and Sabrina Szabo. They run a business called Chaynj. It is a coaching business where they help high performers navigate burnout. This conversation was incredibly enlightening for me personally. I went through a season of burnout many years ago, and the advice that I always heard was tied to taking massive amounts of time off. Not only did I not have massive amounts of time to take off, it wouldn't really solve the problem. I loved working hard and I loved being good at my job. And that was what was so unique to me about this conversation with Frank and Sabrina. High performance isn't a bad thing. There's a chart that Frank references in the conversation about having an appropriate amount of stress in your life. And it really got me thinking, I think a lot of my burnout was actually tied to me being underutilized, not being overutilized. There are a lot of really great insights that Frank and Sabrina share, and I think that this will be helpful for you if you're considering starting your own thing or if you're navigating what it means to stay where you are. Frank and Sabrina, thank you so much for taking time to share your story on the podcast. We met, a little context for listeners, we met a couple weeks ago. A friend of ours introduced us to each other, and we ended up doing some work together. And it was so great learning a little bit of your story to the point where I have to know more. So I'm really excited for this conversation selfishly, just because it was really fun getting to know you and to hear about your business. And so let's start there. Tell people what it is that you're doing right now in your business.
Thank you for inviting us. We are honored to be here. We are coaches, ICF accredited coaches, and we do burnout recovery and prevention. We basically work with those high achievers that are at the brim of burnout, close to burnout, or have already burnout completely.
Yeah. And a lot of what we do is sort of sprung up from our own personal experience. So we have faced burnout in the past, which has led to, some bad decisions, but also provided us with a door to try something new and try something different. And now we just want to help people not having to go through the difficulties that we had to go through, because of our burnout.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you mentioned specifically high performers, but talk to me a little bit about why the unique focus on that group of people.
I think you should start.
Well, there's a couple reasons behind that. One of them is that we like to work with individuals that are, mean what they're about to do. That they're driven by their goals, right? So if they want to focus on actually taking serious, preventing their own burnout, that they are willing to do the work, right? Mm-hmm. That's one reason. The other reason is because we feel that in professions where, there's a lot of expectation, where there's a lot of pressure, stress involved, it's easier for us to overlook, the signs of burnout. And by the time we realize, or by the time we even contemplating the fact that we may be burnout, you already are, right? So we just wanted to tap into an area and help the people that really need someone, to go alongside them and help them through the process of, what is that we can do to help you stay healthy, to help you achieve a work-life balance, and to be present, in your own marriages or relationships in a way that it's not just all about you, So that's what I can bring into this space.
Well, we can bring a lot more. That's why I asked you to start, because you were a high achiever yourself. You were in our environment.
Yeah.
And that's what I was thinking you would lead with.
Yeah, true. So I was I was a competitive athlete and a coach. I was from the sport of gymnastics. So I coached athletes at world and Olympic level. And everything was about achieving the next thing, right? To get to one level up, right? It was always about the next gold medal or the national team. And even though I had athletes at world and Olympic level, I was always trying to chase something more. And oftentimes it was not because of my own goals for myself, but for the goals of others. And I think the best way I could put it is that I put other people's wants ahead of my needs. and that just completely overtook our lives. And I was not present at home. Sabrina had said before, that though she had a husband, though she was married, she didn't have a husband. And, that hit me hard, especially towards the end when I started to feel the signs of burnout. And for me, in my personal life, it actually led to developing high blood pressure. I had some chest pain. So I actually started to develop the physical signs of burnout, not just the mental side of it.
Yeah. For me, high performers are who we would like to work more with, because we grew up, Frank and myself, we grew up in an environment where, 99.9%, it's not 100. Right? So you have to always pursue that. And it becomes your identity. So even when you are not working, you can burn out just being on vacation, because I have a list of things that we have to hit when we are traveling. Right? Like if we go to Disneyland and I have the chronogram, like this is what we're going to do. And we have to do this. So it really becomes part of who you are, which is a bit different with other people, for example, that burn out because they are caregiving. Still really hard, but it's not really part of the identity of always having to achieve something. We have a joke. We just moved to this place a couple months ago, and then Frank had to put the curtain shower. And then I was like, oh, let me help you. And then I see Frank like, why are you doing this so fast? And I want to see how many can I do before you.
Yep. Yeah.
So, this is part of who we are.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's that competitive edge is so present, it becomes so deeply a part of what you do, or because you're doing it all the time in your job. It becomes a piece of how you do everything in your life. It's like you can't stop. How fast can I go through the grocery store? How fast can I, hang up these rings on the shower rod? Like all of those things become, brought into that same pace. And it's hard to slow down and speed up. That's a hard life to live. And so to always go fast though is a hard life to sustain. Something I hear in this is I love the ownership that somebody who's driven can bring to the table. Like in this conversation of getting better, and I'm going to own this process and really lean into that. So I think that's a great perspective as well in reaching this group.
And we can really relate to these people because we understand their mentality, what it's behind having to always produce, the next thing, the next big thing, right? Or just even functioning under pressure, like I said before, right? There's something different, having to always feel the expectations of others or the need, that we need to just keep going. But the positive thing about it is that there is a way to sort of regulate all of that, right? There is a way to turn back, like some people we talked to, they said, oh, I'm beyond repair, which is not true. But there is a Japanese anecdote, I think, that goes that the further you go with the wrong train, the more expensive the ticket will be on your way back, right? So that's why we're trying to do what we're doing here, with burnout prevention, because we don't want people to sort of pay the cost of, what it's going to be like to repair your own life, right? Because focusing on your own health, right? I think it's the most important thing at the end of the day.
I was in sales pretty much my whole life, and I love achieving my goals. I love getting my bonuses, every time that I make that sale, yay. So I also think that we talk about burnout mostly like, oh, the solution is stop working. The solution is just take a weekend off or a month off. But that doesn't help, right? First, because, as I said, it's part of your identity. If you don't break that habit, you're going to bring that habit everywhere you go. There's a saying that says, wherever you go, there you are, right? So you don't change just because the environment changed. But also, we like the idea that you can continue being who you are. Like, you like achieving things, awesome. You like making that sale, amazing. You're not going to have to stop doing that. Let's just do that in a healthier way.
Yeah. I think that was one of the things as we were talking that really caught my attention. I'm pretty driven. Like, my brother's super driven. My parents, or my dad specifically, was very driven in his kind of academic study. And so in my family, 99% was not 100%. and kind of choosing a creative path sort of looks different in that sense, because creatives are like, what even is 100%? So that's a different problem out there. But there's still like a tenacity with which I want to pursue my career, and I want to be helpful to the organization that I'm in, or in the case of where I am now, I want to build a business that's meaningful and making an impact. And in that process of approaching burnout for me, exactly what you're saying. Oh, take 3 weeks off. I'm like, I don't have 3 weeks to take off. Like, that's not even an option. And even if it was, exactly what you're saying, that doesn't change who I am. It doesn't change the speed with which I will get back to this place when I come back from vacation, And so I think that was something for me that was really, really powerful. This idea of, it's not that you're broken or that your bent toward performance is a bad thing inherently.
No, not at
It's
all.
that there is a more healthy way to be high performance. And so,
That's right.
yeah, that to me I think that's a beautiful perspective. And I think it's one that resonates with high performers, because when I would hear, some, oh, well, just, do less work. I'm like, you kid, like that would make me more stressed than anything else. So
Not working.
yeah, it's like that would probably cause me to burn out faster, So
Yeah.
I love that perspective. I think it resonates a lot with me, and I'm not even, in the highest pressure places. And so, yeah, that's good stuff. So
And that-
I'm curious. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to add that that's why it's a wrong analogy when people compare burnout to kind of running out of juice, like when a battery gets depleted. Because when that happens to the battery stops working, right? But you and I, or people that are on the verge of burnout, right? We don't have that luxury. We can't stop working. So it's more like a bank account that's being depleted, right? And now it goes into overdraft. So it's still functioning, it's still working, but now we're working out of the negative, right?
Yeah.
And that's why all these, physical sign or mental signs now are appearing, because we're not at even our optimum to be functioning, at a, in a condition where we can actually produce the result that we want to. So not only we are now burnt out, but we also cannot function or work, at the level that people are expecting us to, let alone the level that we expect ourselves to operate.
Yeah. And Matt, I know you have a question for us, but just because Frank said that, I think it's really important to mention that burnout is spills, right? So it's not something that is individual, that is personal. Because he was burning out, I was burning out, right? Because someone always will have to pick up the slack. And we think that we are functioning at our optimal, but we are not, right? So we make more mistakes. And then someone will have to come and clean up that mistake, and I fix that for you. So it's just be aware, to your listeners, just be aware that you also taking care of others when you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah, that's a really good point. When so for me, the burnout led to me leaving my job, and I remember it was 3 days after I had quit. So I had now been, unemployed. I had another job I was going to, but been unemployed for 3 days. And my wife comes to me and she says, "Welcome back." And I remember thinking, I've been here. Like, what do you mean? She's like, "You've been a shell of yourself for the last 8 months." And so to your point, she felt that. I didn't feel that. Like, I knew I wasn't 100%, but I didn't feel the extreme that she saw and felt. But what that also meant was that she was then picking up that slack for that period of time as well. So to your point, yes, burnout is not I can pull through this and make it happen and kind of power it to get better, because you're also bringing your community of people with you. I remember one conversation where I was just so frustrated and I was complaining with one of my friends at work. And as I look back on it, I think, man, the amount of unhealthiness that I was bringing to him in the mid, because he was still there. Like, he wasn't leaving his job. So I'm just telling him all of these problems with the place where he's working. That's not a healthy mindset for him to adopt. And so, yeah, you bring a lot of people with you in the process. It's a really good observation. And I think for me, that's an observation that I hope prompts people to have a conversation, to take a step in a direction toward actually addressing some of these things, because it really does have the potential to be damaging to a lot of people, obviously yourself too, and that matters a ton. So don't dismiss that part of it. But even if it's just, think of the group of people around you. You know, for me, it's my wife, my kids, my friends. Like, there's a group of people that you're bringing with you in these situations and circumstances. So yeah, that's really good. So I'm curious, we've talked a little bit about what you were doing before coaching, but I'm curious, you know, was building a business something that was kind of always on your radar, or is this something that you've kind of, this is a response to a circumstance? Like, what is it that kind of prompted you to build this business that you're investing in?
Okay, it was always in my radar because I always saw the way that we are just hard workers and driven. And I told him all the time, I was like, Frank, if we just put all this energy, you know, to something that it's for us, like I understand that we are doing something for the community that we work with, but if we could do for ourselves, for something that like with our values, reaching out to the people that we actually believe that need what we can offer, would be amazing. But Frank was too entrenched in his work, and he always dread the administrative area part of the.
Yeah. It was not on my radar. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
It was on her.
Yes, but then when I start talking to him, so there's a little bit of this too. Like, Frank moved a lot with his work. You know, in sports, you receive an offer here, there, and then we move a lot. And every time that we had to move, I had to start all over again at a new place for work. And usually you start at, you know, entry level, and then you make your way up. And I was like, Frank, I'm done with that. You know, every time I have to make my way up. So I'm going to have a career that I can take with me wherever you go. And that's when I started in 2021. I took my first certification for coaching, mental health coaching. And because of that mental health coaching certification, I started to notice that what was going on with Frank was burnout. And he was still in the face of, you know, denial. So we would have some very heated conversations.
Yep.
Because I would tell him, like, hey, you have to stop. This is not how you should be doing this. Like, you know, turn off the email. It's 8 p.m. Tomorrow you can answer those things. And so just going back to your question, I always thought that we could definitely do something on our own, like be freelancers, especially because of that, because wherever we would go, I could take that with me.
Yeah,
And
that's great. Yeah, what
definitely-
convinced you, Frank?
Well, I was just about to say that I remember I had these rashes, you know, that started to come and appearing on my face, and we went to a dermatologist, and then the first thing she told me that like, you must be operating under a lot of stress. And then immediately, as soon as she said that, you know, that denial just kind of like triggered me, and I was like in a quite heated way, I told her that I'm only stressed when people tell me that I'm stressed.
Yeah.
You know, and so I guess there was a lot of things that led up to me sort of recognizing that I should make a change, you know, in my life. The physical signs were definitely one of them, but also I just got to a point where I lost interest. You know, I needed to find something that I could feel as passionate about again as I was, you know, coaching gymnastics. And like I said, even though I had athletes, you know, on national teams representing 3 different countries, right? New Zealand, Turkey, Canada. I never felt fulfilled. You know, I was under the pressure. Like, COVID hit, we were in and out of lockdown up in Canada, and
Almost 2 years.
yeah, and we had to, like, every time I moved in and out of it, I had to restart my program. I had to restart building athletes. I had to, you know, and certain national team members were allowed to train, but, you know, the youngsters were not. So then I had the pressure from the parents, you know, why he can go into the gym, why, you know, my son cannot. And it was hard to explain to them in a reasonable way, right? And sometimes it was difficult even for me to see it from everybody's perspective, you know. And as Steve Jobs said, you know, if you want to please everybody, you should sell ice cream, right? And coaching gymnastics is not like the ice cream selling business.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think I was very narrow minded. I was really, really zoned in on producing athletes, achieving the Olympic dream, helping them to achieve that Olympic dream. And
But
eventually,
sorry to interrupt, but you had a moral code. You told me to let you know
true.
if you ever go to work just for the paycheck.
Yeah, then I would rather work at McDonald's. Yeah,
Yes.
like I didn't want to.
Yeah.
I never wanted to work with in an environment where it was all about the money, because I know how much effort it takes and how much money it takes for these families to, how much sacrifice it takes, for them to put their kids into gymnastics or into any competitive sport, right? And to be honest, I just didn't want to waste their time and money, right? So if I became that coach, I was like, no, thank you. And I started to recognize that I was heading towards that way. So eventually I just, told Sabrina that today is as good of a day as any. So we just pulled the plug. Like I said, I was dealing with health issues at the time. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And I was always, my saying was always, in the next Olympic cycle, I'm done. The next Olympic cycle, I'm
Yes.
done.
Mm-hmm.
But because I'm a perfectionist, as soon as I someone worthy of my attention, that
Oh
they
yeah.
had to possess the talent or whatever, I would be pouring into them and trying to get them to the next level. So it was like a hamster wheel. It's and that's what burnout is really. You find
Yeah.
yourself in not being able to get out of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I personally really went to the very edge of it, like to the point that I was even like my mental health started to decline.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about things I should not have. And eventually, I found in coaching and in this business something that I never thought would be possible. Helping and working with people from different, variety of backgrounds. It basically provided me with an answer and with a light to actually see and do something beyond gymnastics. It was just like, okay, there's other things that you can do in life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. There's a real interesting lie that develops over time as you are really good at something. It's that this is the only thing I can do. And I
Absolutely.
think in a lot of ways that does keep a lot of people in something longer. Like I felt that even when I went from doing graphic design to managing a team. I remember sitting there with at that point the pastor, because I was working at a church, and he said, "Matt, we're paying you now to not do graphic design, even though we did pay you to do graphic design." And I remember thinking to myself, well, I don't know if I'm ready. I've been doing this for 10 years. Like, I don't know if I'm ready to give this up. And it was a really, really hard transition because I couldn't see what was ahead, because I thought, the only thing I can do is just keep getting better as a designer. And so it's a really interesting sort of opening of the door to something broader and bigger with through this shift. So I'm curious then. So the health stuff seems to be something that sort of prompted this. Was there a moment when it was like, we need to help other people navigate this, or was it, let's just build some things and see what kind of sticks? What was sort of the game plan in terms of building this next step for you?
Yeah. So we started when he quit. We took some time off. Obviously, family members were going through a rough path, and we lost some people. My mother, for example. So we took some time off, and then we cared for our family. And during that time, we did some therapy, support groups, and we start seeing that to heal from what we were going through, it's also not a road that you go alone. You need help. You need first to admit, but then you need to have accountability. Just admitting doesn't help, and having those people around us, pushing us forward, like, hey, you made a commitment, stick with it, was really important. Because I was already doing coaching, I started talking to Frank about that. It was like, hey, we could actually help others that are going through things that we've been through. Now that we can see them, clearly, we can help them. We can be that support that we received. Obviously, the support that we received from our therapist was amazing, but it went too deep into, the roots, and it was heavy load. And sometimes therapy takes a long, long time. And sometimes you don't have that time. That's where coaching comes, because coaching is a forward movement, right? Like you always, from what you have, you take the awareness and you move forward. You don't go back to figure out, And I thought that was not just lighter for someone that is in burnout, but it's also for the high achievers. It's what we want. Like, just tell me, how can I move forward, because I'm
Yeah.
stuck, right?
Yeah. You won't get resistance if you ask me to do stuff. I will do the stuff. Just tell me the stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing was that we recognized ways to be able to move forward, right? And we want to give the tools for our clients to know how, right? We recognize that the acronym of how is for, honest, open, and willing. And we dove into whatever that we could think of to gather all the knowledge and the tools so we can put together a program where they can benefit from it in a considerably, fast amount of time, right? What we do is a 12-week program. And within this program, we tap into their emotional intelligence. We use that as a foundation to acknowledge and to sort of pinpoint areas of their lives that needs, improvement, or areas that could be toned down, right? And we bring that alongside with, like psychology, like Sabrina said, coaching, any kind of tools that we have tested, we have applied into our own lives, and we can truly tell you and tell the listeners that it makes a difference.
Yeah. There's also the fact that we are Christians, and we feel that it's part of our mission to help others, like to use the things that we went through to help others to move forward. So it was also a desire of our hearts to help, because it's part of our values.
That's a lot of what was really intriguing to me about what you're doing, because high performance tends to be something where there's a little bit of a tension. Like I know for me, you hear somebody in church saying like, I just want to be high performance in my job. And it's like, well, I mean, is that the right thing to do? Like my take on this, if that's how God built you, lean into it. And so I love that that's a piece of the puzzle here in terms of building a support system and process to help people that are high performance, but also have faith in God. Like that's really important to me to figure out, like how can we serve this group of people? And so I'm glad I don't have to figure it out because you figured it out. So I'll just send all the high performing, burnout prone, high performance, Christ followers your way. But yeah, I think that's an important piece.
You touched upon something very important, because I've actually dealt with this within the sport of gymnastics. Like, what does high performance really mean? Because in the mind of a parent, high performance mean it's a certain category, right? But I always try to explain to them that you can be a high performing athlete in a low category, and you can be a low performing athlete in a high category, right? So high performance, we don't tie that to a particular job title or a particular feeling even, right? We just tie it to a mentality, identity, exactly. Like how are you going to approach this, right? Like I said, how, right? Honest, open, and willing. And having that willingness, I think, is what set people apart, being from low performance and high performance.
You can have a high performance stay-home mom.
Absolutely. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's a great insight. Yeah. Cause I do think that our culture is so like final product oriented. We think that if your YouTube channel has 7 views, you're low performance, but you could be putting so much into that content. And then the same as on the other side, you see some of these viral videos and you're like 10 minutes. I don't know how long that took, but not very long. But the end result doesn't necessarily determine how much went into it. That is a super, super powerful distinction, I think. So I'm curious about, Sabrina, you've always had this kind of desire, Frank, you have not, to start a business. What were some of the fears as you were, kind of having this conversation to say, okay, this is our next step? Like, what does that look like?
Okay, so again, tapping into my faith, I became a Christian when I was 25. But before that, I grew up in Brazil. I'm a Brazilian. And we live in a country that is pretty much Catholic. So we have the idea of God, a high power that we pray to. We not, not all of us follow Jesus. For example, I didn't, but I did know that there was a God. And when I was 16 years old, I had a conflict at home that led my mom to push me out of the house. And I had to live on my own at 16 years old. So from 16 to 25, I went through so many things, hard things. And there was always something to learn from, and there was always provision. I never missed a meal. I never slept in the streets. Never tap into drugs or anything like that, even though I was extremely exposed to it. So now, when I think about what we do, and I think about tomorrow, because that's being a freelance, you don't know if tomorrow you're going to have the client. You have to save up the money that you made today because you don't know if you're going to pay your bills tomorrow.
Yep.
But I tap into that. I remember that I never missed a meal. I always had a home, that God somehow always made it work. Even when I didn't know him, right? Even when I wasn't, when I didn't surrender my life to him. So today, I don't have any fear. I have more like if I have to be honest, like I have more the controlling side of it. Like I have to make sure, like I said, we will not spend this money today because we don't know if we're going to have tomorrow. But it's not that we don't know because God will not provide. It's like he has provided here. So let's make sure that we are good stewards of it. So maybe I can improve a little bit in that. But the fear of like, it's not going to work out, I never had, because I always thought that even if we have to close our business and start something else, this is a great amount of experience that we're going to take with us to the next step.
Yeah, for me, I think the transition was a little bit more difficult because I was very much like you, like thinking that this is all I can do. This is all I've done in my whole life. There's nothing else out there, that fits my abilities or talents or, whatever. And I needed to really see the transferable skills, from one area to another. And that provided me with the comfort, to move one step further, one step further, one step further. And that was one thing. The other thing is to widen my horizon in terms of the knowledge that this new space sort of required, right? So dove into, like I said, to different areas like psychology or getting certified in emotional intelligence, and I truly feel myself as an expert today in that field because I'm passionate about it. Like I was able to develop that same kind of love and curiosity towards, this business and towards what we do today, as I had, towards gymnastics. And it's a great place to be. So I can truly tell to all our listeners that if you feel some level of fear or doubt about the steps that you are going to take or about to take, that's normal. And I think in some level it's also healthy, to feel that fear, because without that, I think we would be very hasty and we would just act without, any impulse control. And having impulse control is always good to sort of check in, with the right reality of things. And it can really guide you and kind of push you towards the right direction and towards the right steps to take.
I'm thinking about the flow chart from Mihai
Csikszentmihalyi, yeah.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit?
Yeah, so flow is basically a chart where if it's basically on one end of the spectrum, there's the challenge, and then the other end of the spectrum is the stress, right? So if in one direction you take too much on, right? Like if the challenge is too difficult, the stress will going to rise with it, right? And then you need to find basically that flow, that middle ground. What is the right amount of challenge with the right amount of stress? And I just think it's a great way to sort of approach things, because That way it can really help you kind of continue to grow, right? But in a healthy way, right? So sometimes we need some stress, like in terms of resistance. Plane need resistance to take off, right? So stress is not the issue; it's the overload of it is the issue. And if there's too much stress, we need to lower the kind of challenge as it is. If there's not enough, we need to increase it, because if it's too low, you're gonna get to a place of boredom, right? And if you do a lot of the things that we don't enjoy or don't like, that can also lead to burnout. So it's not just the overload that leads to burnout; it's the underload,
Yeah. Yeah.
as well.
And acquiring more information, getting to know more what you love, and those kind of things can decrease the stress, and then you can increase your challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, for a lot of creatives, the tendency is to start a project on the outside. And it's funny as you're saying that, because the typical experience for a creative on a staff is that we are underutilized, because we have more ideas that are in some cases outside the box, sometimes risky, riskier than the risk tolerance of the organization. But we are asked to do less in order to kind of not rock the boat. That's brutal because we want to push more. And so in a lot of ways, the solution for a lot of creatives is to create external stress in their life, which is have an outside project or have clients on the side or whatever it is. But to your point, it brings us to a really kind of beautiful equilibrium where we are now back in the appropriate amount of stress, type of situation, the appropriate amount of resistance. So I think that's a great insight. I love that. So now you're here. You've been doing this for a little while now. You've gone through so many of these different situations in life that have all kind of built up to this moment and where you are. So now looking back, what would you say to your considering self, maybe even your burning out self, but what would you say to yourself on the other side now of seeing what reality is in this space? What advice would you give yourself?
I would say to my younger self to listen to others, because I think how we see ourselves and how we actually come across to others, I think it's very different. And we need to let in the people that we trust. So if they do come and tell you something that, hey, you need to slow down, or hey, there's something that you need to change about your life or approach or your work or work-life balance, whatever it is, listen to them, right? Open a dialogue, start a conversation, let people in. Even though we live in a very individualistic sort of, country or society, we need to recognize the fact that we're not alone, and letting those people in that, we're surrounded by on a daily basis, wives, kids, colleagues, parents. Those people's opinion matter, right? They see you in a different light than you see yourself. I used that analogy one time that, when you look at an object from two different, perspective, it can give you a completely different view, even though we're talking about the same object, right? And we need to have the ability to just not to be narrow-minded. I think as soon as the dialogue is open, as soon as people start thinking, as soon as people recognizing that, oh my God, like, is this really how people perceive me? Then I think you're going to be more willing to make a change. And if you want to make better decisions, you need to have better data, right? In order to gather better data, we need to listen.
Yeah. See, the beauty of our relationship is that we are completely the opposite. I'm the gut, he's the heart, and he needed to listen to more people. For me, it's to create that boundary and make sure that only the good information comes in. So there will be a lot of people that will say that this is crazy, don't do it. Or how are you going to do this? How are you going to pay your bills? Like, oh, medical, like you don't have, insurance has, your life is going to be really difficult from now on. All that can create anxiety and fear and can make you either give up or not even start your business. So I think having that boundary and knowing what kind of information, like you have to choose the data that you let in, the people that you let in. And also, when we give that opportunity to people, we have to let them know, this is what I'm expecting from you, right? I'm expecting truth with love. But there will be a time that I'm going to say, okay, I got all that I needed. From now on, let me just move with the information that I got, because it can happen that some people, well-intended friends and family, they will think that because you're giving them the opportunity to speak into your life, that now they will run your life for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. That's
And just
great.
don't wait, for the physical signs, like anxiety, panic attacks. I have, and I know what that feels like. I know how scary it can be. I know how debilitating that is. The physical signs are not the cause of burnout.
Yeah.
They're the result of it.
I think sometimes the fear of starting something new keeps people in an unhealthy place too long. And then exactly what you're saying, it leads them to a point that's even worse than the fear of how do I figure out medical. Now it's I have to use the medical that I have because my physical symptoms are, appearing.
People often associate, failure as the opposite of success, but the opposite of success is inactivity, right? Like you can only fail if you had started something, if you had tried something, and if you fail, it's data. It's an opportunity for you to learn. It's an opportunity for you to grow. But if you're unwilling to take a step forward, if you're unwilling to take that leap, sure, you won't fail, but you won't go anywhere either.
There's always this kind of moment in these conversations for me where I'm really struck by something. And I just want to say, I love how you two model the partnership that is both marriage, but also leading something together. I think the battle, the battle of having your own business is stressful and complicated, and it's a challenge because, like you're saying, there is the reality of, okay, so even if I have a good month, how many bad months will that keep me through? How will that cover me through? And to have people in your life that are supporting you and are partnering with you in that is just so important. So both the community aspect that you're talking about, Frank, but also just seeing that expressed in the way that you two have navigated this pursuit of the business that you're doing, and using those challenging situations in life to build something that helps others either avoid it, hopefully, or kind of, pull back from that edge. And so I just want to say, I think that's beautiful because that is such it's almost like a cheat code of like, wow, what a great advantage to have, but also what a great model for people to look at and see and say, yeah, this is something that is important. This is a piece of the strategy of living a successful life. And so I love that comes through so much in our conversation. And so I just want to throw that out there because I love it because it's encouraging to me. And so, yeah, keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
The last thing I always love, just making it clear for people, how can they follow along with what you're doing? How can they connect with you? What's the best way to plug into the stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, so our website is www.chaynj.com. Change is spelled Chayny, and it's the phonetic spelling of the word change. We wanted to do something fun that says, like, well, it's not wrong, it's just different.
Yeah.
And that's the new life, right? That's the life of a freelancer. It's not wrong, it's just different.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, that's great. And then I know, Frank, you have a book. I want to just elevate that. Tell me a little bit about the book and what people can find in it.
Yeah, so the book is called Frankly Told, and yes, pun intended. So it's basically a memoir about my life, my background, but also how I found Jesus in the midst of everything. So there is a biblical lens, sort of over all the chapters, pointing people back towards the Bible, and then just show people that how relevant it is to our lives. Whether you're a believer or not, I think it's a good read. It's a very vulnerable, very raw, very open kind of a book for the people to read. And there are thought-provoking questions at the end of each chapter, which just allow the reader to sort of reflect on their life based on my example. And I just wanted to be there for people sort of asking the questions that sometimes we're, hesitant to ask ourselves. And yeah, I just wanted to create a book that I wish I had in my hand when I was younger, so I could avoid making the mistakes that I've made in my life. And yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And then am I right that you can get a free chapter of it on your website? Is that
correct? Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So more motivation to go to the website. That's all going to be in the show notes too, so people will have links to that and everything. But thank you guys so much for both sharing your story. I mean, I'm thankful for what you're building as well. So just on that level alone, thank you for building what you're building. But thanks for taking time to share your story with us. And I think encourage people to kind of embrace a healthy approach, but also one that is a little bit courageous and make their own jump. One of the big things that stood out to me in this conversation was just how important community is when it comes to both navigating burnout, but also building your own thing. For me, I feel so fortunate that my wife is my biggest fan. And for Frank and Sabrina, it was clear that even though, like Sabrina said, they're opposites, they work together so well and they help each other. They challenge each other. They push each other to build the best business that they can. If you're looking for community, I just want to encourage you to be relentless about finding it. I've created a community called the Christian Creative on School. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. And if that's something that is missing in your life, if you're wanting to build a creative business and you don't really know what that looks like, you don't really have a support system around you, let that be your support system, even if it's only until you build something in real life. I want to help Christians who are pursuing creative work in the church and in their own business in that group. And so even if you're thinking about starting something on the side, it's a good fit. If you're in ministry, it fits. That's the intention of the group, to be that community for you. Thanks so much for listening. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to The Jump Moment. To find support for your jump to freelance, join our community at jumptofreelance.com.